Announcements none. Papers have been laid. Questions?
Mr. Speaker, my questions are addressed to the Honourable Prime Minister. Whether in regard to the Chagos archipelago, he will state where matters stand as to the negotiations initiated with the United Kingdom on the exercise of the sovereignty thereon by Mauritius, indicating the names of the persons representing the government of Mauritius and that of the United Kingdom, respectively.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I shall reply to this private notice question together with parliamentary questions B909 and B918 as they relate to the same subject matter. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me start my reply by paying tribute to the struggle led by late Sir Anirudh Jagannath, former Prime Minister, which paved the way for the historic progress we have achieved so far as a nation for the exercise of our sovereignty over the Chagos archipelago. The House will recall his very passionate and emotional opening statement at the International Court of Justice in September 2018, which will remain a landmark in our fight for the complete decolonization of our territory. Mr. Speaker, sir, as the House and the nation are aware, prior to our independence, the United Kingdom excised the Chagos archipelago from the territory of Mauritius in violation of international law and United Nations General Assembly resolutions, including Resolution 1514, number 15 of 14th of December 1960. In its efforts to complete the decolonization of Mauritius, and given the active role played by the United Nations General Assembly in the process of decolonization, Mauritius requested on 14th of July 2016 the inclusion in the provisional agenda of the 71st session of the General Assembly of an item entitled Request for an Advisory Opinion of the International Court of Justice on the legal consequences of the separation of the Chagos archipelago from Mauritius in 1965. This item was subsequently included in the agenda of the 71st session of the United Nations General Assembly, which was adopted on 16th of September 2016. Subsequently, on 22nd of June 2017, the General Assembly adopted by a majority of 94 votes to 15 Resolution 71/292 to request an advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice. Mr. Speaker, sir, on 25th of February 2019, the International Court of Justice delivered an advisory opinion in which it determined that the process of decolonization of Mauritius was not lawfully completed upon its accession to independence in view of the illegal excision of the Chagos archipelago from Mauritius, and that the United Kingdom is under an obligation to bring to an end its administration of the Chagos archipelago as rapidly as possible. The court also determined that the United Kingdom's continued administration of the Chagos archipelago constitutes an unlawful act of a continuing character entailing the international responsibility of that state. On 22nd of May 2019, the United Nations General Assembly adopted by an overwhelming majority of 116 votes to 6 Resolution 73/295, which fully endorsed the determinations of the ICJ. In this resolution, the General Assembly, inter alia, affirmed that the Chagos archipelago forms an integral part of Mauritius and that the continued administration of the Chagos Archipelago by the United Kingdom constitutes a wrongful act entailing the international responsibility of that state. The General Assembly accordingly demanded the United Kingdom to withdraw its colonial administration from the Chagos Archipelago unconditionally within a period of no more than 6 months, that is, by 22nd of November 2019. The United Kingdom has failed to meet that deadline. The General Assembly also called upon the United Nations and its specialized agencies, as well as all other international, regional, and intergovernmental organizations, including those established by treaty, to recognize that the Chagos Archipelago forms an integral part of the territory of Mauritius, to support the decolonization of Mauritius as rapidly as possible, and to refrain from impeding that process by recognizing or giving effect to any measure taken by or on behalf of the so-called British Indian Ocean Territory. Pursuant to General Assembly Resolution 73/295, the United Nations amended its official map in February 2020 to clearly depict the Chagos Archipelago as part of the territory of Mauritius. In the judgment, which it delivered on 28 January 2021, in the maritime delimitation case brought by Mauritius against Maldives, under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, the Special Chamber of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea held that the authoritative determinations made by the International Court of Justice in its advisory opinion of 25 February 2019 have legal effect and clear implications for the legal status of the Chagos Archipelago. It also ruled that Mauritius has undisputed sovereignty over the Chagos Archipelago and that the United Kingdom's continued claim to sovereignty over the Chagos Archipelago is contrary to the determinations made by the International Court of Justice that the detachment of the Chagos Archipelago from Mauritius was unlawful and that the United Kingdom's continued administration of the Chagos Archipelago constitutes an unlawful act of a continuing character. Mr. Speaker, sir, on 24 August 2021, the Universal Postal Union, which is a specialized agency of the United Nations, adopted by a majority of 77 votes to...
Does the Prime Minister think I would ask the PNQ so that he would read just at what he has read 10 times already in this Parliament? Does the Prime Minister think that this is the point of the PNQ, that he would read what he has read to us 10 times before?
May I continue to reply, Mr. Speaker, sir? So I was saying on 24th of August 2021, the Universal Postal Union, which is a specialized agency of the United Nations, adopted by a majority of 77 votes to 6, a resolution which formally acknowledges that, for the purposes of its activities, the Chagos Archipelago forms an integral part of the territory of Mauritius. The resolution also instructs the International Bureau of the Universal Postal Union to cease the registration, distribution, and forwarding of any and all postage stamps issued by the so-called British Indian Ocean Territory. It is clear that, as a matter of international law, as authoritatively determined by the international courts and tribunals, the Chagos Archipelago forms an integral part of the territory of Mauritius. Mr. Speaker, sir, when I met the Right Honourable Elizabeth Truss in her capacity as the UK Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs in November 2021 in Glasgow, in the margins of the 26th session of the United Nations Climate Change Conference. I lengthily discussed with her the issue of Chagos Archipelago. She undertook to look into the matter and the way forward. Subsequently, when the Right Honourable Elizabeth Truss became Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, I met her on 21st September 2022 in New York in the margins of the United Nations General Assembly. During that meeting, I again discussed with her on how Mauritius and the United Kingdom could engage in discussions for the completion of the decolonization process of Mauritius. After further discussions and following the agreement of the United Kingdom that any agreement should be based on international law, Mauritius and the United Kingdom decided to begin negotiations on the exercise of sovereignty over the Chagos Archipelago, as I had announced to the House on 3rd November 2022. Through negotiations, taking into account relevant legal proceedings, it is the intention of Mauritius and the United Kingdom to secure an agreement on the basis of international law to resolve all outstanding issues, including those relating to the former inhabitants of the Chagos Archipelago. Mauritius and the United Kingdom have reiterated that any agreement between the two countries will ensure the continued effective operation of the joint UK-US military base in Diego Garcia. Since my statement of 3rd November 2022 to the House, Mauritius and the United Kingdom have held 4 rounds of negotiations on 23rd and 24th November 2022, 11th and 12th January 2023, 23rd and 24th February 2023, and 2nd and 3rd of June 2023, alternately in the UK and in Mauritius. These discussions have led to better understanding between the two sides and covered issues relating to the exercise of sovereignty by Mauritius over the Chagos Archipelago, whilst ensuring the continued effective operation of the joint UK-US military base on Diego Garcia. Resettlement of the former inhabitants of the Chagos Archipelago, strengthening our cooperation on a range of issues such as environmental and marine protection, improving security and tackling illegal activities in the region, amongst others. Mr. Speaker, sir, on 14th of February 2023, I spoke to the Right Honourable Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. We welcomed the progress to date and agreed to pursue the negotiations with a view to arriving at an agreement in the coming month. The dates of the next round of negotiations are about to be finalized. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the wake of the unlawful excision of the Chagos Archipelago from the territory of Mauritius, all the former inhabitants of the Chagos Archipelago were forcibly removed by the United Kingdom in blatant violation of their basic human rights. Most of them were moved to Mauritius. Government is fully sensitive to their plight and supports their legitimate aspiration as Mauritian citizens to return and resettle in their place of birth. The ongoing struggle of Mauritius to complete its decolonization and the resettlement of Mauritian citizens, including those of Chagosian origin, are indissociable. Government is strongly committed to implementing a resettlement program in the Chagos Archipelago. This commitment is enunciated in the government program 2020-2024 and has been reiterated by government on several occasions, including in this House and in international fora such as the United Nations. In this regard, the special provision of 50 million rupees made in the budget for financial year 2019-2020 has been maintained in the budget for subsequent financial years, including for 2023-2024, for meeting inter alia expenses relating to preparations for eventual resettlement in the Chagos archipelago. However, government is conscious of practical impediments to such resettlement, such as access to the islands of the Chagos archipelago, lack of basic infrastructure and services. Mr. Speaker, sir, in preparation of an eventual resettlement in the Chagos archipelago, ministries, departments concerned have already started the appropriate and necessary background work. Several ministries and departments have highlighted the need for on-site surveys to be carried out in the Chagos archipelago. For this reason, government proposes to organize another trip to the Chagos archipelago so that an assessment mission can be carried out on the requirements for a proper resettlement. Mr. Speaker, sir, the government of Mauritius has ensured the active involvement of the Chagosians in its efforts to facilitate their return to the Chagos archipelago and continues to do so. In this regard, government has been having regular consultations with the Chagosians based in Mauritius. Although the negotiations are between the governments of Mauritius and the United Kingdom, government will continue to hold consultations with the Chagosians and ensure that their rights are safeguarded. Mr. Speaker, sir, in view of the injustice suffered by members of the Chagosian community, some countries have expressed a willingness to support their resettlement. We expect the United Kingdom to cooperate with Mauritius in implementing a program for resettlement in the Chagos archipelago. This would not only be fair and just, but also provide an opportunity for the United Kingdom to make amends for the historic wrong that occurred. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Mauritius delegation to the negotiations is led by the Secretary to Cabinet and Head of Civil Service. The other members of the delegation are as follows: Ambassador J.D. Kunjal, the Permanent Representative of Mauritius to the United Nations, New York; Mr. N.K. Bala, Special Advisor, Prime Minister's Office; Mr. D.K. Debi, Legal Advisor, Consultant, Attorney General's Office; Ms. S.C. Yong Kim Fat, Minister Counselor, Prime Minister's Office; Professor Philip Sands, KC, Legal Advisor; and Mr. Paul Reichler, the Legal Advisor. However, should the topics being discussed so require, the composition of the Mauritius delegation may change. As for the UK delegation, it is currently made up of 7 senior officials duly mandated by the UK government. The number of members of the UK delegation can fluctuate depending on the topics covered. Mr. Speaker, sir, late Sir Anirudh Jagannath solemnly affirmed that he considered the struggle for Mauritius to exercise its full rights over the entirety of its territory as a sacred duty towards the nation. I fully subscribe to that statement, and as Prime Minister, I am pursuing that mission with utmost zeal and determination. I can state at this stage that we are making headway in the negotiations with the United Kingdom with a view to successfully fulfilling that sacred mission we have engaged into since 2014. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, let me also pay homage to all the deportees, their descendants, and remind the Prime Minister that the legal process with the appointment of Philip Sands in fact started in 2010 by by the then government. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Honourable Prime Minister, I noticed that since January 20 of this year, he hasn't mentioned that the negotiations are going satisfactorily. This is why I want to ask him first, are you satisfied with the way the negotiations are going, and when do you expect to conclude the matter, being given that in November 2022, you and Mr. Cleverly both said that you expected the negotiations to be over and concluded by early of this year?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I think everyone will realize that the issues that have to be discussed are not simple and straightforward. Some of them are quite complex and therefore requires time. In fact, when we started, we had to agree on the basis on which negotiations will start. Even that, I don't want to go into details. I just mentioned that my meeting in the margins of the United Nations General Assembly with the Right Honourable Elizabeth Truss, at that time Prime Minister, we had lengthy discussions on that issue, and we finally came to an agreement on the basis on which we shall start negotiations. Now, negotiations have started, a number of issues are on the table, and I must say, we are making progress. Now, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is asking me, I think when will negotiations be completed? I think he must have also, the same question has been put in the House of Commons by Jeremy Corbyn, and he asked the Minister, the Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs, James Cleverly, when will negotiations be completed? And the answer was, I'm not able to give a date or a projected date of when we will conclude these negotiations. I have to repeat the same, because there are a lot of issues that have to be discussed and come to fruition. So it will take time that it has to take, but provided that we are making progress. So we'll see. There is a next round of negotiation. We have, first of all, to agree on the dates, because you can imagine that those people forming, from our side anyway, we have to try to see when we can get common dates, because we have our legal counsel who have other professional obligations as well. And then we have to get common dates from the UK side also. So let negotiations proceed. And as and when there are any matters that I have to report to the House, I will do so.
Speaker, the Prime Minister has taken 23 minutes so far of PNQ. I hope you will be indulgent in this respect of this very national issue. I'd like to ask the Prime Minister this question. Sovereignty has been granted to Mauritius unconditionally by the International Court of Justice. Therefore, can the Prime Minister be clear that we're also talking about sovereignty on the whole of the Chagos, including Diego Garcia?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I have always been clear about this issue. And I am a bit surprised that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is having some doubt. I have said repeatedly, wherever, on international fora, even in public functions, not later than a few days ago when we were commemorating the deportation, the last deportation of the Chagosians to Mauritius, I publicly stated in my speech that there are certain fundamental issues for Mauritius. One of them, of course, is the issue of sovereignty. We have a judgment from the International Court of Justice. We have a judgment from the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea endorsing the judgment of the International Court of Justice, which clearly states that the only country having sovereignty over the Chagos archipelago. And Chagos archipelago, including Diego Garcia, is Mauritius. So I hope that it is as clear as that.
It's good to be clear. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Prime Minister, given that we have sovereignty on the whole of Chagos, including Diego, therefore the base will be leased to the government of Mauritius. And I wish to remind the Prime Minister that the US are paying something like 3 billion rupees. Sorry, by the US, of course, as you understand. The US government is paying 3 billion rupees a year for a smaller, lesser base in Djibouti. Therefore, what is the quantum of compensation, rent, compensation to the Chagosians, resettlement fees that is presently on the table being asked by the government of Mauritius? My calculation, it should be above 50 billion rupees.
Okay, so I take note of the proposal of the leader of the opposition. 50 I heard, 50 billion rupees. Well, but Mr. Speaker, sir, we are not yet there. So when we are there, we will, of course, inform the House and Mauritius.
Resettlement of the Chagosians. The Prime Minister has much spoken about the KPMG report, which is a very full report. And that KPMG report, at 2014 prices, was giving something like 300 million rupees. No, 15 billion rupees, excuse me. 15 billion rupees for the proper settlement of the Chagosians. So can I ask the Prime Minister, therefore, the 50 billion is not a chiffre farfelu. It is an actual figure calculated carefully, and therefore is the Prime Minister confirming that there is an amount for resettlement, for compensation, for rent, for back rent, that is being asked of the UK government? Just as the fact at the moment.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the KPMG report has proposed 3 options. Yeah, 3 options. But the options are based on a number of different indicators. I don't want to go into the detail of that report, but one of them being the number of people who are going to resettle there. Now, in one option it is 150, the other 500, approximately. In the other it's 1,500. So, and it is also based on whether there is going to be an airport meaning at least a landing strip, or there's going to be a harbor meaning again some breakwater or harbor facility like a jetty. And so there are different variables. And I don't want to mention any sum of money that has, any amount that has been earmarked at that time. But this is 2014 anyway. So this has to be, well, the leader of the opposition is saying much more based on what? We need to know. We need to know on what kind of infrastructure we want to build there. We need to know how many people eventually we will cater for resettlement. We need to know what are the facilities that have to be provided there. That is why we have started preliminary works in order to see eventually what kind of facility we want to be developed there. And we need to field a mission, as I've stated in my answer. We need to field a mission for those people, technical people, to carry out a survey and eventually to tell us, well, this is what can be done, and, you know, and I said also we will most probably need the support of other countries. Some countries have already expressed their collaboration and their contribution to help us in this démarche for resettlement. And I have said, well, UK, we will be discussing with UK also to see how they can collaborate for facilitating this resettlement.
Mr. Speaker, the KPMG reports, obviously I don't think you're talking about resettling 150 people. That would be quite ridiculous. We're talking about resettling 1,500 people. Otherwise, what's the point? I'd like to ask the Honourable Prime Minister whether he's aware in the report that it talks of the only feasible way of doing that is to put them on the eastern side of Diego Garcia itself. Has that point been raised at the moment in the resettlement discussions that Mauritius, having sovereignty, would only lease western side and keep the eastern side for the Chagosians? That is also in the report.
The leader of the opposition is saying he's not talking about resettlement of 150 people. That is ridiculous. But he mentions about the KPMG report. The KPMG report talks about one option of resettling 150 people. So you know which is which. You should know what you want to refer as a document. Now, you're talking about resettlement on the island of Diego Garcia itself. Well, all this is a matter for discussion. I am not able to, at this juncture, to be able to give details about this discussion. I've said earlier that these discussions, we have agreed that it is only when we will come to a conclusion, when there is an agreement, that the details of those discussions will be communicated. So we'll see. It is a bit premature at this stage, when discussions are not over, to start talking about what has been said, what has been discussed, where we have reached.
I'd like to ask the Honourable Prime Minister, I don't think does he realize that the Mauritian population do not want to be left with a fait accompli. They want to know what is being discussed and what is going to be agreed in their name. I'd like to ask the Honourable Prime Minister this question. Honourable Prime Minister, this question. There is also the question of the double nationality of Chagosians. Many of them are attached to this. What is on the table for discussion concerning the double nationality of Chagosians? Will they be able to retain, obviously, the Mauritian citizenship, but also the UK citizenship? Is that something that government Mauritius is discussing?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I think the leader of the opposition should be the last one to talk about fait accompli. Because look at all the progress that we have made, all the victories that have been achieved by government since 2014. Look, it is, for me, it is such an important issue that concerns the whole of the Republic of Mauritius. I don't want to mention what Philip Sands Casey said in an interview to L'Express on the former Prime Minister, because he made a remark and Philip Sands had to correct him. So let us not go into that debate, and let us not make politics out of this. For me, what is important is that we are able, and we are moving forward. We are making, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are making tremendous progress on this issue. Tremendous progress, with victories at the International Court of Justice, the United Nations General Assembly, the resolutions that have been voted, with a majorité écrasante, and the judgment of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, where it has demarcated the maritime boundary between Mauritius and Maldives, based on the fact that Mauritius has full sovereignty over the Chagos archipelago. And this judgment has to be respected by all countries. It is binding on all countries. And that is a final judgment. No one can question that again. So look at the headway we are making, the progress that we have made so far. And now, with regard to resettlement, I have said earlier, and I repeat again, that all Chagosians will be able to, those who want to resettle, will be able to resettle according, of course, to the laws of Mauritius.
The question that I asked specifically was on double nationality, not on resettlement. We've canvassed that before. Let me ask the question this time. What is the situation? What is the position of the government of Mauritius with regard to asking the UK government to maintain the double nationality facilities that the Chagosians presently have? And since I've just repeated the question before, and also tell us, since the Prime Minister is saying we are making fantastic progress, and we will know that in the negotiations, tell us whether he has a resettlement plan in the coming weeks and months so that we can start thinking of how the Chagosians will be resettled.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition should not try to confuse people. What I said is fantastic progress about our fight to get sovereignty over the Chagos archipelago. This is what I said. Do I need to recall to you the ICJ judgment, the UN resolution, the ITLOS? This is what I said. Fantastic progress. If you don't call that fantastic progress, Mr. Speaker, sir, I don't know what is the progress that we are making then. Anyway, let me come back. Let us not waste time. Let me come back to the question. Anyone having Mauritian nationality, and for that matter, it is not only Chagosians. Anyone having Mauritian nationality will be able to travel, to go to Chagos. Those who want to resettle will be able to resettle. What is the problem? Now, do I know who has a double nationality, triple nationality, or how many nationalities? Of course, anyone having Mauritian nationality will be able to resettle.
Mr. Speaker, I think the worst possible outcome would be for the whole of the Chagosians settled in the UK to be somehow shipped back to Mauritius or to Chagos. This is why, if he has at heart the interest of the Chagosians, he would also see that the people who have left this country and gone to the UK are allowed to continue and have a freedom of choice, that they are not reshipped back, possibly, this time, double jeopardy. This is why the question was asked.
No, there's no issue. What double jeopardy? I said anyone who has a Mauritian nationality will be able to go back. So, what is the issue?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Will Prime Minister state whether prior to Britain entering into preliminary negotiations with Mauritius, whether Britain has agreed in principle to relinquish sovereignty over Chagos archipelago?
Well, prior to negotiations, I don't understand. I don't know where. Let me answer. You put a question. Did I interrupt you? You are sitting on what? Odds? I have not seen anywhere any statement from, I must say, at least either former prime ministers or actual prime minister of UK, where they have stated that they are going to relinquish sovereignty. I have not seen that. Maybe the honourable member should tell me when, where has been publicised that UK is, even before negotiation, that they will relinquish sovereignty. In fact, sovereignty, this is one of the issues where I have said earlier to Honourable Leader of the Opposition, a fundamental issue to us, Mauritius, that because we have already had a judgment, the judgment is clear, crystal clear, and therefore sovereignty for us is a fundamental issue.
Merci. Le Premier ministre s'est posé plusieurs questions sur le resettlement, compensation, accès à l'archipel, etc. Ne pense-t-il pas que la seule à pouvoir répondre à ces interrogations est la communauté chagosienne? Parce que le Premier ministre avait affirmé au début de sa réponse que la composition des délégations pourrait changer de temps à autre. Le Premier ministre peut-il donner la garantie que la communauté fera partie de toute délégation concernant toutes les négociations.
Monsieur le Président, contrairement à ce qui se passait auparavant sous le gouvernement travailliste, il n'y avait jamais eu non seulement de consultation, mais les Chagossiens ne formaient pas de partie de délégations qui ont été ailleurs. He's no good. He's no good. He's no good.
Hey, you don't have the right. Oh, you don't have the right to talk. Let the honourable member put the question. Order! 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 If you want to stay in the house, order. You're going too far.
You continue with your reply.
Member of the opposition, I heard him say that the Prime Minister is lying. And then he said he's misleading the House. No, you said misleading
Even
afterwards.
Even misleading.
You said lying.
Is
Please, you must withdraw that.
lying, you see? So apologize. Apologize to the House.
I apologize in the name of all our establishment friends.
Whatever, you apologize to the House without any conditions.
Good. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I was saying that, par contre, nous, lorsque on a été aux Nations Unies, les Chagossiens ont été partie de la délégation aux Nations Unies, et d'ailleurs, on a fait une exhibition aux Nations Unies pour conscientiser davantage tous les pays membres. Lorsqu'on a fait le survey pour qu'on puisse faire un rapport technique concernant notre cas de délimitation du territoire maritime entre Maurice et Maldives, les Chagossiens ont formé partie de cette délégation. Ils sont allés sur Perros Banos, sur Salomon, Blenheim Reef, librement, sans être escortés par les Britanniques. Et jamais il y avait eu auparavant. Hein. Mais par contre aussi, Monsieur le Président, je tiens, comme moi maintenant, auparavant, Sanirou Jagnat, comme Premier ministre, et moi je le fais régulièrement, on a des consultations, on donne, bien sûr, on est en train de brief les Chagossiens, et on est en consultation permanente, justement, surtout concernant la question de resettlement.
Time over by 14 minutes. Honourable members, the table has been advised that PQ B952 will be replied by the Honourable Prime Minister, time permitting. MP Omia.
B904.
Yeah. Le médicament là. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I'm having a flu. Mr. Speaker, sir, the House would recall that on Monday, 12th of June 2023, in my reply to the private notice question, I informed the House that pursuant to the powers vested in him under Section 71 of the Constitution, the Commissioner of Police had set up a special striking team in August 2022 to enable the police to maintain its trust in the combat against major crimes, such as drug trafficking, money laundering, and other organized crimes. In fact, the SST complements other adjuncts of the force in the fight against crimes. Similar to other units, the goal of the SST is to advance intelligence-driven operations and improve the police force's reactive capabilities. Such actions are intended to enhance the efficacy of police operations and live up to the expectations of the nation. Mr. Speaker, sir, the SST is based at the police headquarters and is directly responsible and accountable to the Commissioner of Police. The team is under the charge of an officer of the rank of Assistant Superintendent of Police and is being supervised by the Staff Officer, Police Headquarters, who is of the rank of Superintendent of Police. The role and responsibilities of SST laid down in CP's Order Number 1 of 2022, dated 3rd of August 2022, are inter alia to conduct targeted intelligence-led crackdown joint operations around the island, with a view to dismantling drug nexus, drug networks, and criminal activities involving association of malefactors. Assist the anti-drug and smuggling unit, the National Coast Guard, the Police Helicopter Squadron, the Asset Recovery Investigation Division, the Customs Anti-Narcotics Section of the Mauritius Revenue Authority, and the Independent Commission Against Corruption in the prevention and detection of important drugs and drug-related cases such as drug dealing, trafficking, smuggling of goods, and money laundering, amongst others. Support local police, divisional and central criminal investigation departments in the arrest of habitual criminals and persons wanted in serious offences or other offences likely to cause disaffection, hostility among the population, and perform such other duties as may be assigned by the Commissioner of Police. Based on intensive intelligence gathering and credible information, the SST carries out field operations across the island. As at Thursday, 29th of June 2023, drugs or money or other articles or a combination thereof have been secured in relation to 47 cases. So far, 60 arrests have been effected in connection with these cases. Mr. Speaker, sir, in regard to Part A of the question, I am informed by the Commissioner of Police that out of the 47 cases referred to earlier, exhibits have been secured in respect of 30 cases related to drugs with a total estimated street value of 606,849,714 rupees. The drugs seized comprise heroin weighing 12,131.23 gram, with estimated street value of 181,968,450 rupees, Subutex in the form of 675 pills with estimated street value of 1,620,000 rupees, Tramadol in the form of 175 pills with estimated street value of 17,500 rupees, Teranobilon in the form of 47 pills with estimated street value of 4,700 rupees, synthetic cannabinoids weighing 7,995.61 grams with estimated street value of 119,934,150 rupees, cannabis weighing 58,082.47 grams with estimated street value of 69,698,964 rupees, cannabis resin weighing 46,276.69 grams with estimated street value of 231,383,450 rupees, 53 cannabis plants with estimated street value of 159,000 rupees, 177 cannabis seeds with estimated street value of 17,700 rupees, and MDMA in the form of 1,022 pills and its particles weighing 0.9 grams with estimated street value of 2,045,800 rupees. Out of the 30 drug cases mentioned earlier, in 4 cases, the SST has also secured money in local currency amounting to 411,650 rupees. Furthermore, I am informed by the Commissioner of Police that 10 cases relate to money laundering. Both local and foreign currencies were secured amounting to approximately 10,639,843 rupees. Out of the 10 cases, the SST has also secured jewelry worth 5,399,000 rupees in one case. In 2 other cases, roll your own cigarette papers estimated at 301,500 rupees were also secured. The remaining 7 cases relate to other articles secured, namely 238 strips of cable cover, 23,364 kg of copper ingots, 24 molds and 56 bags of copper wire of an estimated value of 18 million rupees. 4 solar panels, 13 metal poles, 18 exercise mats, 113 plastic pipes, 13 rolls of synthetic grass, 170 tons of rubble stones, 200 bricks amounting to approximately 7 million rupees, and 670 boxes of roll your own cigarette paper amounting to 246,988,000 rupees. Other articles secured which are still being evaluated include inter alia, weapons, live rounds, laptops, mobile phones and vehicles. Mr. Speaker, sir, in regard to Part B of the question, I am informed by the Commissioner of Police that the cases handled by SST involving money and articles are still under inquiry. Hence, the exhibits have not been returned. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am further informed by the Commissioner of Police that all exhibits are secured and kept in accordance with the Police Standing Order 138, Safe Custody of Exhibits. More specifically, pursuant to Section 58 of the Dangerous Drugs Act, drug exhibits are kept at the exhibit room of ADSU Headquarters, Line Barracks. The exhibit room is under a 24/7 CCTV surveillance.
Thank you. May I ask the Honorable Prime Minister, following elements in an affidavit by one VS, has the Honorable Prime Minister been briefed or given any further information by the Commissioner of Police with regard to partial disclosure of articles seized in relation particularly to the one that happened at Bossonge in January 21 and the one seized at Rochebois in 2020 with regard to firearms?
Well, how would I know what firearm the honourable member is referring to at Bosonge and which firearm he is referring in an affidavit which has been sworn by Mr. S. The honourable member has to come with a specific question.
I am of the opinion that there has been an amendment. That's why I asked the question. Can the Honourable Prime Minister inform the House whether he has been given any further information by the Commissioner of Police with regard to seizures of drugs or other items, as he mentioned today, whether the exhibit officers that were present, particularly once again at Bosonge and the one at Rochebois, were the same ones under the command of the ASP of the team?
Again, Mr. Speaker, sir, if the honourable member wants to have an answer to his question, he should have put a specific question in relation to Bosonge and I don't know where else. He asked a question, a general question about seizure of drugs, money, articles. Does he think that I am like a store? I have all the records of all the files with me and that I will just open the file like a computer and then give an answer? Come with a specific question. I think you must...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. May I ask the Honourable Prime Minister, who is the Superintendent of Police who is supervising the SST team? And how many inquiries have been completed and sent to the DPP office for prosecution?
Yes, I have the... I should have the name. Yeah. So the special striking team is under the charge of Mr. Ashik Jagai, Assistant Superintendent of Police, and is being supervised by Mr. Dhanraj Gangadin, Superintendent of Police, Staff Officer, Police Headquarters.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. With the exception of drug cases, can the Honourable Prime Minister provide information on the nature of other cases dealt by the Special Striking Team?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. There have been 7 cases on money laundering, 2 cases of conspiracy to money laundering, 1 case of alleged money laundering, 1 case of importation of prohibited articles, 2 cases of possession of government property, 2 cases of possession of illegal weapons, 1 case of suspected proceed of larceny, and 1 case of larceny.
Yes, please.
I was waiting for the mic. Thank you. Can the Honourable Prime Minister inform the House whether he holds information from the Commissioner of Police as to the number of complaints that have been made to his office insofar as items that have been missing during police SST operations?
Well, I'm not aware because the question was not about whether there has been any complaint. But if the honourable member has information about complaint, let me have this information. I will check with the Commissioner of Police. Yeah.
The question is about the striking team and seizure of exhibit. Has the attention of the Honourable Prime Minister been drawn to a letter that has been sent by an officer of the Post Office based in the airport about how he interacted with the striking team, and which, if the content of that letter is true, would amount to a conspiracy by the members of the striking force?
No, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm not aware of any letter. So if the honourable member can, of course, provide me with this letter, I will certainly ask the But it seems he knows about the letter. That's why I'm asking. I am not aware. Where is it? Where is it? Everywhere where? Where? I'm not everywhere. I am not a busybody. I don't go and look everywhere. So if it is everywhere, but hand over a copy to me. You seem to know also. Let me have a copy, Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Order. Honorable Bada.
Yes, I had asked the question earlier, Mr. Speaker, how in many cases the inquiry has been completed and the case, 47 cases were mentioned. May I ask the Honorable Prime Minister in how many cases the inquiry has been completed and sent to the DPP office for prosecution since the setting up of this special striking team?
I think I said that the inquiry ongoing. That is why, but I don't have details about whether any one case has been sent to DPP. But of course, I can provide this information. So I undertake to circulate this information.
Next question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. B905.
Yeah, sorry. Mr. Speaker, sir.
Mr. Speaker, sir, since the PNQ, I'm trying to make a point of order. I heard the Honorable Joanna Béranger trying to intimidate Honorable Alan Ganou while he was making his point of order by uttering the words Chatoa Ganou to prevent him from making his point of order. I think that she should tender apologies. She should tender her apologies to the House and to the senior member of Parliament who has been in politics and in Parliament for 40 years.
Honorable, if you said something wrong, please apologize to the House.
But I still think the same.
We are not interested in content. You apologize in the House, to the House. Okay. Please. What is happening there? This is Parliament. This is not a supermarket. Members are paid to sit in Parliament. So,
De pouvoir être révélé là. Gagne patience.
Let's go back to Parliament.
Yes.
Are you ready? You're paid?
Mr. Speaker, sir, in my statement of 9th of May 2023, I had informed the House that the Special Chamber of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea delivered on 28th April 2023 a judgment establishing a binding international maritime boundary between Mauritius and Maldives. This boundary delimits the exclusive economic zones and the continental shelves of the two states within 200 nautical miles in the region of the Chagos archipelago. The Special Chamber also ruled that it had jurisdiction to delimit the extended continental shelf between Mauritius and Maldives beyond 200 nautical miles. It further rejected the objection raised by Maldives to the admissibility of Mauritius' claim to the continental shelf beyond 200 nautical miles on the grounds that Mauritius had not filed in a timely manner its submission with the Commission on the limits of the continental shelf. However, the Special Chamber found that it was not in a position to determine the entitlement of Mauritius to a continental shelf beyond 200 nautical miles in the northern Chagos archipelago region, given the disagreement between Mauritius and Maldives and the significant uncertainty as to Mauritius' entitlement. The Special Chamber therefore decided that it would not proceed to delimit the continental shelf between Mauritius and Maldives beyond 200 nautical miles. Nonetheless, the Special Chamber encouraged Mauritius and Maldives to consider giving their consent to the Commission on the limits of the continental shelf to consider each other's respective submissions which are currently frozen because of objections leveled by each one against the other. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is pertinent to underline that following the preliminary objections raised by Maldives in its jurisdiction, the Special Chamber of ITLOS had given on 28 January 2021 a judgment in which it rejected all those preliminary objections. At the core of Maldives' preliminary objections was the claim that there was an unresolved sovereignty dispute between Mauritius and the United Kingdom over the Chagos archipelago. Maldives argued that the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice of 25 February 2019 did not resolve the sovereignty dispute over the Chagos archipelago and is, in any case, not binding. In rejecting the preliminary objections of Maldives, the Special Chamber of ITLOS confirmed that Mauritius has undisputed sovereignty over the Chagos archipelago. It ruled that the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice resolved the question of sovereignty over the Chagos archipelago when the court determined, without a single dissenting vote on the merits, that the Chagos archipelago is and has always been an integral part of Mauritius. The Special Chamber of ITLOS also ruled that the United Kingdom's continued claim to sovereignty over the Chagos archipelago is contrary to the delimitations made by the International Court of Justice, determinations made by the International Court of Justice to the effect that the detachment of the Chagos archipelago from Mauritius was unlawful, and that the United Kingdom's continued administration of the Chagos archipelago constitutes an unlawful act of a continuing character entailing the international responsibility of that state. It further held that the United Kingdom has no claim, but only, I quote, a mere assertion, and that such, unquote, and that such assertion does not prove the existence of a dispute. With regard to Maldives' contention that the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice is not binding, the Special Chamber of ITLOS ruled that, and I quote, an advisory opinion entails an authoritative statement of international law on the questions with which it deals, unquote. In that regard, the Special Chamber of ITLOS held that, and I quote, judicial determinations made in advisory opinions carry no less weight and authority than those in judgments, because they are made with the same rigor and scrutiny by the principal judicial organ of the United Nations with competence in matters of international law, unquote. The Special Chamber of ITLOS underscored that, and I quote, determinations made by the International Court of Justice in an advisory opinion cannot be disregarded simply because the advisory opinion is not binding. This is true of the International Court of Justice's determinations in the Chagos advisory opinion, inter alia, that the process of decolonization of Mauritius was not lawfully completed when that country acceded to independence in 1968, following the separation of the Chagos archipelago, and that the United Kingdom is under an obligation to bring to an end its administration of the Chagos archipelago as rapidly as possible. The Special Chamber considers that those determinations do have legal effect, unquote. It is therefore crystal clear that under international law, the Chagos archipelago forms an integral part of the territory of Mauritius. It is deeply regrettable that certain countries which claim to be champions of the rule of law continue to show blatant disregard for the authoritative determinations of the International Court of Justice and of the rulings of ITLOS. I urge them to stop being in denial of the legal reality and to bring themselves into compliance with international law by recognizing the sovereignty of Mauritius over Chagos archipelago, including Diego Garcia. Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Articles 16.2 and 47.9 of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, Mauritius had deposited in July 2006 with the Secretary General of the United Nations the list of geographical coordinates of points representing the baselines, closing lines, and archipelagic baselines from which the maritime zones of Mauritius shall be measured, as contained in regulations made under Section 4, 5, 14, and 27 of the Maritime Zones Act. Mauritius had also deposited charts showing the base points and archipelagic baselines. In view of the binding international maritime boundary which has been established between Mauritius and Maldives in the Chagos archipelago region, Mauritius will have to amend the following regulations which are made under the Maritime Zones Act. 1. Maritime Zones, Baselines and Delineating Lines, Regulations 2005. 2. Maritime Zones, EEZ Outer Limit Lines, Regulations 2008. And 3. Maritime Zones, Territorial Sea Outer Limit Lines, Regulations 2021. Amendments are required to these regulations in order to take into account the new baselines from which the maritime zones of Mauritius around the Chagos archipelago have to be determined, and the extent of the exclusive economic zone which has been allocated to Mauritius as a result of the delimitation exercise carried out by the Special Chamber of ITLOS. The services of international mapping, a cartographic consulting firm based in the United States, and which was retained for the case against Maldives, have been enlisted to assist the Department for Continental Shelf, Maritime Zones Administration and Exploration of my office in reviewing the baselines and the EEZ outer limits to amend these regulations. Once the regulations are amended, the list of amended geographical coordinates of points will have to be deposited with the Secretary General of the United Nations. Mauritius has also deposited charts and the list of geographical coordinates of points of its extended continental shelf with the Secretary General of the International Seabed Authority, pursuant to Article 84(2) of UNCLOS. Following the judgment of the Special Chamber of ITLOS, modified charts and a list of amended geographical coordinates of points will have to be submitted to the International Seabed Authority. Mr. Speaker, sir, since Mauritius is the sole state lawfully entitled to exercise sovereignty and sovereign rights over the Chagos archipelago and its maritime zones, it falls exclusively to the government of Mauritius to establish a marine protected area in the waters of the Chagos archipelago, in accordance with national policies and through the promulgation of regulations under the Fisheries and Marine Resources Act. At the United Nations Ocean Conference held last year in Lisbon, Portugal, Mauritius announced its intention to create a marine protected area around the Chagos archipelago. Following the delivery of the judgment of the Special Chamber of ITLOS, Mauritius will proceed to finalize its proposal for the creation of that marine protected area, taking into account the maritime boundary which the Special Chamber has established between Mauritius and Maldives. Mr. Speaker, sir, the judgment of the Special Chamber of ITLOS has settled the dispute between Mauritius and Maldives on their overlapping claims to an exclusive economic zone and a continental shelf within 200 nautical miles. Mauritius now intends to explore avenues for enhanced cooperation with Maldives, including as regards the protection of the marine environment. Mauritius also proposes to organize visits to the Chagos archipelago from Maldives with their agreement, since it would be less expensive to do so as compared to Rodrigues and Seychelles. As announced in the budget 2023-2024, government will undertake another trip to the Chagos archipelago to carry out an assessment mission on the requirements for a proper resettlement in the Chagos archipelago. Mr. Speaker, sir, since new coordinates of the base points of Mauritius have been established by the Special Chamber of ITLOS, the submission which we have already made to the Commission on the limits of the continental shelf in respect of the northern Chagos archipelago region has to be revised. Necessary action is being taken by the Department for Continental Shelf Maritime Zones Administration and Exploration of my office in that regard. On 22nd of May 2023, our permanent representative to the United Nations in New York has informed the Commission on the limits of the continental shelf that Mauritius proposes to make a revised submission in due course.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Honorable Prime Minister in his answer mentioned about the proposition of the creation of a marine protected area around the Chagos archipelago. Can the Honorable Prime Minister give further information? What are the actions that are being envisaged and whether there are any specific guidelines that would be followed for the proposal of the creation of a marine protected area around the Chagos archipelago? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. Well, let me say that, first of all, Section 4.1 of the Fisheries and Marine Resources Act does provide that the Minister responsible for fisheries and marine resources may, by regulations, declare any area of the maritime zones of the Republic of Mauritius, including the seabed underlying such zones, any land associated with the maritime zones, or any wetland, to be a maritime protected area. Now, in establishing this marine protected area around Chagos archipelago, government, of course, will be guided by a series of key principles. Now, there is a list of those principles. There is a committee also comprising of various ministries and departments that was set up in August 2019. The committee has set up a technical subcommittee that is chaired by the Department for Continental Shelf Maritime Zones Administration and Exploration to work on the preliminary legal and technical framework. And I can provide to the House the latest proposal of the technical subcommittee. So I will circulate all those information so that not to take the time of the House.
Last question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. In his answer, the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned about the different zones that would be created within the proposed marine protected area. Can the Honorable Prime Minister shed further light and provide further details on those zones specifically? Thank you.
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, let me just mention what are the zones that are going to be set up. There's the strict conservation zone, the conservation zone also. Then there is the habitat protection zone, the resettlement buffer zone, and the sustainable use zone. Again, I will circulate all the information with regard to each one of those zones.
The table had been advised that PQB 906, 910, 911, 913, 914, 915, 916, 920 have been withdrawn. Question to Minister. Honorable Badam.
B922, sir.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm informed that a geotechnical investigation is the process of investigating a proposed construction site for the purposes of determining the layer of natural soil deposits that will underlie a proposed structure and their physical properties. I'm accordingly given to understand that a geotechnical investigation report is, in brief, a summary of compiled data establishing soil characteristics for developing ground model, defining ground engineering properties and resettlement characteristics, pavement design and foundation design in construction projects. I stand informed that in the past, geotechnical investigations were commissioned by the National Housing Development Corporation Limited, Company Limited, NHDC, as and when deemed necessary. Further to an incident at New Grove in or about the year 2005, when an NHDC construction collapsed due to underlying lava tunnels, a geotechnical investigation is now commissioned in relation to each and every social housing project. Now, in my reply to PQB/28 of 28th March of this year, I informed the House that 39 sites are required by the New Social Living Development Limited, NSLD, across the island of Mauritius for the construction of 8,000 housing units in all the 20 constituencies. I wish to point out that since the beginning of the exercise, 113 sites have been identified and assessed by relevant authorities. I'm informed that of these 113 sites, 46, many of which, although ideally located, were subsequently deemed unsuitable for construction of social housing. Thereafter, geotechnical investigations were undertaken on the remaining 67 sites, of which only 44 sites were found to be buildable. 39 of these 44 sites have been earmarked for phase 1 of the project. I am tabling the list of 38 sites earmarked for the construction of 8,000 housing units in relation to which geotechnical investigations have already been carried out. I am further informed that these geotechnical investigations have been completed, 38 sites. I'm further informed by the NSLD that such investigations have been undertaken by reputable and dedicated service providers in this highly specialized technical field, namely the GeoCrust Limited, LaboLink Limited, and Water Research Limited. The NSLD has confirmed that these 38 sites have, based on the reports of the geotechnical investigations, been found to be suitable for the construction of housing units. I am further informed that geotechnical investigation in regard to the 39th site, which is located at Suriname, has not yet been carried out, as the site has only just been identified. Now, Mr. Speaker, geotechnical investigation reports are obviously of a highly technical nature, and I am informed that by the NSLD that the report for each site is voluminous and consists on average of 200 pages. It would appear that since the creation of the NHDC in 1991, 16,643 housing units have been so far constructed on 145 sites. According to information available at the Ministry of Housing, never in the past has a Minister of Housing tabled copies of geotechnical investigation reports. Accordingly, I do not propose to table the geotechnical reports relating to 38 sites in the National Assembly. However, should the Honourable Second Member for Vauquois-Floréal require any specific information having regard to geotechnical investigations of NSLD sites, I shall endeavour to provide same.
In view of the importance of this geotechnical investigation, because of the flooding and the fact that we have to build drains which cost a lot, my first question is whether the Suez Consulting report about flooding in all areas in Mauritius, whether that report has been used in these geotechnical investigations.
Mr. Speaker, again, I am not an expert in those matters and cannot provide relevant information in respect of different reports. All I can say is that, as the House is aware, there is now in existence a land drainage authority. From the time that a site is identified, there are preliminary visits by all relevant authorities, including the Land Drainage Authority. It is only with the clearance of all these authorities that the NSLD goes ahead for the commissioning of a geotechnical investigation, after which, in any event, the whole process of obtaining building and land use permit is embarked upon, which will require once again formal clearance from all relevant authorities, including the Land Drainage Authority, including the Central Water Authority, and only then will we embark upon construction, considering the safety of all eventual inhabitants of NSLD social housing and the very significant public investment of public funds involved.
Yeah, can I ask the Deputy Prime Minister, what has been the cost of these investigations by the specialized teams?
Again, I do not have the information. I do not know whether there is a standard cost or, depending on the site, the costs vary, but this is information I can certainly provide if the Honourable Gentleman would specify if he wants the cost for a specific site or he wants an average cost for all the geotechnical investigations carried out. I think I mentioned 67 sites which have been surveyed so far. The total cost, yes, I shall be happy to lay such information in the library of the Assembly.
Honourable members, I'll suspend the sitting for 1.5 hours.